She bit the strategist in fury, now her body's demanding union. The thunder of alien voices crashed over the battered sands, rattling through Marcus's aching limbs. He stood, breath ragged, above the defeated bulk of the Gorthak challenger. A hulking brute now sprawled in the dust. Around them, the arena's harsh luminescence glinted off the shattered blade and the length of cable Marcus had wielded for his improbable win. The crowd, accustomed to sheer force, was momentarily hushed by his cunning. He drew another shaky breath, heart still pounding in his ears. The stench of scorched metal and sweat clung to the air, mingling with the tang of ozone from the cracked energy barriers ringing the arena. All eyes bore into him, row upon row of Zynar, Torvek, and other species unknown to Earth, their faces twisted with surprise, frustration, or, in a few, reluctant respect. Marcus's gaze flicked upward, seeking the only opinion that mattered. High above, the platform carved into the obsidian wall cut a stark silhouette against the glaring lights. Reclining there was Lysara, the undisputed champion of the Zynar Colosseum. Her skin, pale green and flawless, shimmered beneath the arena's lights. Jade eyes, sharp as cut glass, followed his every move, appraising, unblinking. Her green hair spilled around pointed feline ears, a vivid cascade that caught the light. She leaned forward just enough for her slender tail to flick in restless irritation, betraying a hint of agitation she would never voice. Their gazes locked across the charged air. Marcus felt the weight of her assessment. No praise, only the cold, silent measure of a predator sizing up prey. But beneath the icy challenge, a glint of reluctant intrigue sparked. An acknowledgement, however grudging, that he had survived not by brute strength, but by desperate wit. The hush in the arena broke, a wave of growls and hisses swelling behind him as the handlers dragged the unconscious Gorthak away. Marcus's legs trembled, not just from exertion, but from the knowledge that each victory here bought only another day, another trial. Back in the dank holding cells, the mood was soured by anticipation. Shadows clung to the rusted bars and pitted stone, the air thick with fear and old blood. Marcus slumped onto his pallet, running a hand through sweat-stiff hair. His cellmate, Brun, a grizzled Torvek with a nose crooked from too many breaks, eyed him with wary amusement. "Too clever, human. The warden wants a show, not riddles." Brun's voice was rough, tinged with the accent of his distant homeworld. He jerked his head upward, toward where the Colosseum's champions' quarters lay. "And Lysara? She honors power, not tricks." Marcus leaned back against the wall, letting his head thump against the stone. "She fights like a storm. I've seen her in the ring. No wasted motion, no mercy." Brun snorted. "You're not like them. That's why they watch. But be careful. Attention can kill here." The warden's voice crackled through the ancient comm grid, a sound like a blade scraping bone. "Prisoner Marcus, prepare to face the Vorak." The words seemed to suck the air from the room. All around, the other prisoners went silent, gazes dropping. Brun spat on the floor, a dark stain spreading in the dust. "The Vorak. Bastards want you dead, and they want to see you scream." "What is it?" Marcus asked, forcing his voice steady. Brun's lip curled. "A monster. Not bred for fighting, bred for killing. They send it in when the crowd wants blood. You—" He shook his head. "Don't try to outthink it. There's no outsmarting a Vorak." But Marcus had no choice. The next moments blurred, the clank of shackles, the shove of armored guards, the jangle of distant cheers growing into a roar. He was thrust through the entry arch, blinking into the blinding white heat of the sands. The crowd's hunger pressed down on him, palpable, suffocating. Marcus forced himself to scan the arena. Pillars scattered in erratic patterns, bits of ancient machinery half buried in the dust, the ground uneven and treacherous. He had no weapon, only the shredded remnants of his shirt and the raw edge of his will. He instinctively glanced up. Lysara sat atop her high dais, chin propped on her hand, gaze unreadable. Her posture was languid, but Marcus saw the tension in her shoulders, the stillness of a hunter before the pounce. For a fleeting moment, it was as if the world shrank to just the two of them, her eyes, his fear, and a silent question hanging between. The arena's heavy gates crashed open, shaking the ground. The Vorik thundered forth, a towering mass of sinew and fur, 6 limbs ending in wicked hooked claws, slavering jaws agape. Its eyes burned with feral intelligence. The crowd screamed for blood. Marcus darted behind a pillar as the Vorik charged, claws gouging deep furrows in the sand where he had stood moments before. He tore a strip from his shirt, wrapping it around a broken spar of metal, and waved it to catch the creature's attention. With a roar, it lunged, jaws snapping inches from his arm. Sweat stung his eyes. He feinted left, then dove right, luring the beast in a wide arc across the arena. Every instinct screamed at him to run, but he forced his mind to race ahead, searching for anything he could use. There, a patch of sand darker than the rest, a slight depression. He remembered the Gorthak's earlier stumble, the half-buried trap set to maim, not kill. Marcus sprinted for the spot, keeping just ahead of the Vorik's pursuit. At the last second, he spun, flinging the strip of cloth into the beast's face. The Vorik reared back, momentarily blinded. Marcus skidded to a halt beside the trap, grabbed a stone, and hurled it at the nearest pillar. The impact loosened a cascade of rocks overhead, sending them tumbling down. As the Vorak barreled after him, claws scrabbling for purchase, Marcus rolled aside. The creature's massive bulk triggered the trap, a hidden pit, causing it to stumble, then collapse as the rocks came crashing down. Dust geysered up, blotting out the beast's furious roars. Silence fell. The crowd held its breath. From the dais, slow, deliberate applause echoed, sharp, measured, unmistakable. Lysara rose, her jade eyes alight with new interest, a smile ghosting her lips. Marcus straightened, heart thundering in his chest. He had survived, and now, truly, she saw him. Marcus's reputation swelled. Word of his victory over the Vorak spread through the stone corridors and reeking pits of the Zynar Colosseum like wildfire. Prisoners watched him with a new, wary respect. Guards eyed him as both asset and threat. In the cells, even Brune's gruff tone had softened. "You're a marked man now, human. Some want you dead, but most just want to see what you'll do next." The warden, always hungry for drama, and the sweet, volatile elixir of a captivated crowd, wasted no time. That evening, his voice rang out over the battered comms, oozing satisfaction. Tomorrow, a rematch for the ages, Marcus against the Gorthak. Should the human triumph, he earns the right to challenge our champion herself. A murmur of excitement trembled through the halls. Marcus knew what the warden was after. Not just spectacle, but a crescendo, a collision between the rising star and the reigning queen. He lay awake long after the lights dimmed, heart thumping, mind racing through strategies. He remembered every blow from their first encounter, every glint of the Gorthak's tusks, the stench of his breath, the weight of his fists. But this time, there would be no tricks. He'd have to face the beast head-on, nothing held in reserve. The next day, the arena vibrated with anticipation. Even the sand seemed to bristle with nervous energy. The Gorthak stood across from him, bulkier than ever, eyes narrowed with wounded pride. A hush swept over the audience as the signal blared. The Gorthak lunged, swinging a massive arm at Marcus's head. He barely ducked, feeling the wind of the blow rush past. The brute pressed in, relentless, swinging again and again. Marcus took the first barrage, rolling with the punches, feeling his ribs bruise, his arms sting. But he didn't falter. He waited, watching, counting, recalling a soldier's discipline from years lost to memory. The Gorthak reared back, roaring, confident in his strength. That was the opening Marcus needed. He shifted his weight, sidestepped, and drove his elbow into the soft tissue beneath the brute's armpit. The Gorthak grunted in surprise. Marcus seized the opportunity, twisting the thick arm, using leverage rather than force. The Gorthak's massive frame toppled, his feet scrambling in the sand. Marcus dropped with him, landing a sharp knee to the creature's flank and wrenching his arm behind his back. The crowd gasped, a collective intake of breath at the sight of cleverness coupled with fearless aggression. The Gorthak struggled, but Marcus tightened his hold, pinning the beast's shoulder until it shuddered in submission. He released his grip and rose, battered but unbroken. For a moment, the arena was silent. Then, the stands erupted. A wave of noise that pounded Marcus's ears, a thunderous roar of approval. They had seen not just cunning, but courage. Not just survival, but a willingness to take the blows and rise again. Through the cheers, Marcus looked up at the high platform. Lysara was already watching, her jade eyes alight with something new and dangerous. That night, after the crowds had faded and the echo of their applause had sunk into the stone, Marcus sat in the gloom of his cell, replaying the fight in his head. Brune was snoring in the corner, oblivious to the shift in the air. A soft hiss broke the silence, the cell door sliding aside. Marcus tensed, ready for an ambush or a guard's baton, but instead, Lysara stepped through the threshold. She wore a simple tunic, no armor, no weapons. The fabric clung to her lithe form, accentuating every line of muscle beneath her pale green skin. The room suddenly felt smaller, the air charged with an unfamiliar electricity. Lysara's eyes traced him, slow and deliberate. Her feline tail swayed behind her, a pendulum marking time. She circled him, silent, her gaze lingering on each scar, each bruise, every steady breath. Marcus stood his ground, refusing to shrink away or avert his eyes. He met her stare, searching for meaning, challenge, warning, or perhaps something more intimate. She drew so close he could feel her breath on his skin, the faintest scent of wild herbs and metal. Still, she said nothing, only watched, a silent, predatory evaluation. Marcus's pulse hammered in his throat. He wanted to speak, to break the tension, but words caught in his mouth. At last, Lysara paused in front of him, her lips parted as if on the verge of speech. For a moment, the distance between them was measured in heartbeats. Then, with the same suddenness as her arrival, she turned and vanished into the corridor, leaving the cell door to hiss shut behind her. Marcus let out a shaky breath. He pressed a hand to his chest, feeling his heart race. The duel had begun, and it was not the one he'd expected. The morning of the championship arrived with a chill that seeped into Marcus's bones. The holding cells buzzed with rumors, bets, and nervous anticipation. Brune clapped him on the shoulder as the guards approached. "Win or lose, you've changed things here. Don't forget that, human." The march through the winding corridors felt endless. When Marcus finally stepped into the blinding light of the arena, the world seemed to narrow. The crowd, the walls, the alien sky, none of it mattered. All he saw was Lysara, standing at the center, blade gleaming in her hand. Her skin glowed, her green hair pulled back in a warrior's knot, eyes locked on his with an intensity that pinned him in place. The warden's voice thundered overhead. "Champion Lysara faces Marcus. Let the contest begin." They circled, reading each other, searching for weakness. Lysara struck first, a blur of motion, blade flashing toward Marcus's head. He ducked, countering with a feint, drawing her closer to a cluster of broken pillars. She adjusted instantly, never giving him the same angle twice. Their battle became a storm. Lysara pressed hard, her strikes swift and precise. Marcus matched her, guiding her toward hazards scattered through the arena, jagged fragments of metal, shifting patches of sand, a forgotten energy conduit sparking in the dust. She snarled, eyes narrowing as she realized what he was doing. "Trying to make me dance, human?" Marcus grinned, breathless. "You're quick on your feet, Lysara. Let's see if you can keep up." She lunged again, and he rolled aside, using a broken column as cover. He watched her adapt, her movements growing less predictable, her attacks sharper. The duel was no longer brute strength against wit. It was wit against wit, each testing the other, each forcing the other to evolve. Sweat ran down Marcus's spine. He parried a vicious strike, spun away, and caught a glint of uncertainty in Lysara's eyes. She was enjoying the challenge. He risked a step forward, baiting her, then disarmed her with a clever twist, sending her blade clattering across the sand. For a single heartbeat she was exposed. Marcus hesitated, weapon raised, breathing hard. In that instant, he saw her not as an enemy, but as a soul cut from the same cloth, fierce, relentless, unwilling to yield. He lowered his blade, meeting her eyes. Lysara's composure shattered. With a guttural snarl, she sprang at him, knocking him to the ground. Sand exploded around them as she pinned him, knees pressing into his shoulders, her hands gripping his wrists. For a moment, her face hovered above his, fanged mouth parted, wild hair falling across her eyes. Then her fangs grazed his shoulder in a bite that sent fire through his nerves. A flash of pain, and something stranger, electric, an energy that pulsed between them. Marcus gasped, half in agony, half in awe. Lysara recoiled as if stung, scrambling back, her chest heaving. The crowd roared in confusion and delight, sensing a spectacle beyond violence. The match was called, the warden's voice booming, but neither champion nor challenger heard it. They stared at each other across the churned sand, breathing hard, changed in ways neither fully understood. The fight was over, but the real struggle had only just begun. Sequestered in her quarters, Lysara felt the fever ignite, a storm raging in her veins, burning through every cell with a hunger she could neither name nor resist. The wound she'd left on Marcus's shoulder throbbed not just on his flesh, but in her core, a brand of claim and consequence. She paced the polished obsidian floor, tail lashing, breath shallow. Her senses were ablaze. The taste of his skin lingered on her tongue, the memory of their battle replaying, fierce and electric. No amount of water or meditation could quench the fire. She pressed a cool cloth to her brow, but the fever only deepened, twisting need into a physical ache. Servants kept their distance, eyes downcast, whispering about the champion's agitation. Lysara barely heard them. Her body rebelled, her mind fractured between instinct and pride. This was not simply a wound. The bite was a claim, a biological chain forged in the heat of combat, a bond she had invoked, knowingly or not. With a snarl, she flung open her chamber doors, scattering the nearest attendants. "Out of my way!" she growled, voice edged with wildness. She strode through the corridors, every step purposeful, predatory. The guards at the prisoner wing straightened, uneasy. Lysara's presence radiated something raw and dangerous. A storm barely contained. She did not slow, did not explain. With a single gesture, the cell doors hissed open. Inside, Marcus sat on his cot, the shadows beneath his eyes deepening his gaze. He looked up as she entered, reading the tension in her posture, the wildness in her eyes. He stood, wary but unflinching. Lysara said nothing. She seized his arm, ignoring his startled wince as her grip pressed against the fresh wound. She half-carried, half-dragged him through the halls, a silent procession watched by wide-eyed servants and sullen guards. The fever in her touch was unmistakable. Marcus followed, heart thundering, understanding blooming in his chest. They reached her quarters, the air thick with heat and anticipation. A nervous attendant hurried in, clutching a tray of bandages and antiseptic. The young Zynar's hands shook as she cleaned Marcus's shoulder, her eyes darting between Lysara's narrowed stare and the human's silent resolve. As soon as the dressing was secured, the attendant bowed and fled, leaving the door to hiss shut behind her. The silence that followed was taut as a drawn bow. Lysara prowled the edge of the chamber, her body trembling with need and frustration. Her tail lashed, her claws flexed and unflexed. "You did this!" she snarled, her voice rough with accusation, and something far more vulnerable beneath. You made me bite. You set this bond in motion. Marcus, standing in the center of her world, met her gaze steadily. He saw the sweat on her brow, the flush beneath her jade skin, the way her breath came ragged and desperate. "You're burning," he said softly. She bared her fangs. "Don't mock me, human. You don't know what you've triggered." He shook his head, stepping closer. "I know enough. I saw the way you fought it. Even now, you're fighting it. But I'm here, Lysara. You're not alone in this." A tremor ran through her, every muscle tense with the effort of restraint. "I am the champion. I don't lose control, not to instinct, not to anyone." Her voice cracked, the admission tearing from her throat. Marcus's tone gentled. "So fight for what you want, not just what your instincts demand." She glared, caught between fury and helplessness. "What I want," she echoed, as if the concept was foreign. She closed the distance between them in a heartbeat, her hands gripping his shoulders, her breath hot on his cheek. The fever in her eyes was unmistakable, but behind it was a question, desperate and raw. The fever peaked, her body shuddering, her need undeniable. With a growl, she lunged, pinning Marcus to the furs of her wide, low bed. Her strength was overwhelming, her grip bruising, her lips finding his with a hunger that bordered on violence. Yet even in her frenzy, a war raged within her, instinct against will, dominance against vulnerability. Marcus did not resist. He lifted his hands, framing her face, forcing her to meet his gaze. "Lysara, look at me." His voice was steady, grounding. "What do you want, Lysara? Not what your instincts demand. What do you truly want?" The words cut through the haze of need, slicing straight to her core. Her hands trembled where they gripped his arms. For a long moment, she said nothing, the battle raging behind her eyes. Then, her voice barely more than a whisper, she confessed, "I don't want to be alone." The admission shattered something between them. Her posture shifted, the predator melting into something softer, more human. In that instant, the power dynamic that had defined their every interaction fell away. There was no champion and captive, no hunter and prey, only two souls, exposed and aching, drawn together by a force neither could deny. Marcus's thumb traced her cheek, gentle as a promise. The fever in her veins melted, replaced by a warmth that was no less intense, but infinitely more bearable. Lysara bent to him again, this time not as conqueror, but as equal, her lips searching, her hands tentative. Their union was fierce and tender, an act of surrender, a shedding of armor, a forging of trust. They moved together, breath for breath, pulse for pulse. Every barrier fell away, leaving only sensation, only truth. For Marcus, it was a homecoming, an anchor in a world of chaos. For Lysara, it was a revelation, connection deeper than instinct, stronger than blood. Sometime in the quiet hours before dawn, they lay entwined, the fever broken, a new intimacy settling between them. Lysara's head rested on Marcus's shoulder, her tail curled around his thigh. He stroked her hair, marveling at the shift in her, at the peace he found in her arms. For the first time since his capture, Marcus allowed himself to believe in something beyond survival. He felt Lysara's breath slow, her body relaxing against him. She murmured, "You're not what I expected, Marcus." He smiled, pressing a kiss to her brow. "Neither are you." She smiled, a rare, genuine thing, and closed her eyes. Together, they drifted into sleep. But the fragile sanctuary of morning was shattered by a metallic clatter at the door. It burst open, the warden storming in with a retinue of guards. He swept the room with a predatory grin, eyes glinting with cruel satisfaction. "Ah, our champions," the warden purred, voice echoing off the stone. "The crowd is clamoring for more. You two, together, this time. A team match. Let's see how love and blood mix in the sand. Marcus sat up, instinctively shielding Lysara. She bared her teeth, rage flaring in her eyes. The warden only laughed, savoring their vulnerability, the spectacle he'd engineered. Dress, you fight at noon, he declared, stepping back to let his guards watch over them. His words hung in the air, a fresh gauntlet, a new battle forced upon them. As he vanished down the corridor, Marcus and Lysara exchanged a look, a silent vow passing between them. Whatever awaited in the arena, they would face it, side by side. Thrown into the arena together, Marcus and Lysara emerged side by side, the sun harsh against the battered sands. The air thrummed with anticipation, the crowd's curiosity sharp and electric, a new energy, different from the usual bloodthirst. Today the spectacle was a question. Would champion and challenger destroy each other, or something else entirely? The gates ground open with a metallic groan. From the shadowed maw, 3 cybernetic predators burst forth, towering, gleaming with chrome and bioengineered muscle, eyes lit with cold, artificial intelligence. The smallest, a lithe panther thing, circled warily. The second, 6-legged and spined, stalked the perimeter, sensors twitching. The last was a behemoth, plated and bristling with jagged weapons, its roar a cacophony of hydraulics and rage. Lysara's blade flashed into her hand. She crouched low, muscles tensed. Marcus's eyes swept the arena, measuring the battlefield. Broken columns, exposed power conduits, shifting patches of sand. He remembered every lesson from war and captivity. Survival was never brute force alone. He kept his voice low but clear, pitched for her ears alone. "Lead the big one to the columns," he ordered, nodding at the armored brute. Lysara's tail flicked in agreement. She darted forward, a blur of speed and grace, taunting the behemoth with feints and quicksilver footwork. The crowd gasped as she danced mere inches from its crushing claws, drawing it toward the ring of ancient stone columns. Marcus trusted her agility. He focused on the others. He scooped a double handful of sand and waited. The panther thing pounced, metal fangs flashing. Marcus flung the sand into its optics, blinding it for a precious instant. The beast recoiled, hissing, sensors sparking. The spined predator lunged at the panther thing, its programming thrown into chaos by Marcus's interference. The 2 machines clashed in a savage tangle of metal and violence. "Now!" Marcus shouted, signaling Lysara. She dove between the columns as the behemoth gave chase. Its bulk sheared a pillar in half, sending debris crashing down. She vaulted over the wreckage, luring it deeper into the trap Marcus had envisioned. He sprinted after the spined predator, which had separated from the tangled pair. He spotted an exposed conduit near its underbelly, a vulnerability. "Lysara, left flank!" he called, flanking the machine. She leapt, driving her blade between armored plates at his signal. Sparks erupted, the predator spasming and collapsing in a heap of twitching limbs. Marcus turned to see the blinded panther thing regaining its senses, its aggression redirected. The behemoth, roaring in frustration, swung at Lysara, but she slipped aside. Marcus darted behind the beast, slamming a column fragment against a maintenance hatch. The panel popped loose, revealing a pulsing power cell. "Strike here!" he barked. Lysara didn't hesitate. She slid beneath the beast, blade flashing. With a precise thrust, she pierced the power cell. The behemoth's roar became a shriek, energy arcing wildly as it toppled, bringing down a rain of sparks and shattered metal. They stood amid the wreckage, breathing hard, sand and blood, both human and alien, splattered across their skin. The crowd roared, a tidal wave of exhilaration. For a moment, Marcus and Lysara simply looked at each other, a perfect blend of strategy and ferocity. But Marcus's gaze lifted to the warden's private box. The man's face twisted with fury, his lips moving in a command. Marcus saw the subtle signal, the flick of a wrist. Above, turret ports slid open. Guards on the Colosseum's rim leveled energy rifles at the arena floor. The first bolt sizzled through the air, striking where Marcus and Lysara had stood moments before. "Execution!" someone in the crowd screamed. The people's mood twisted, curiosity turning to outrage. "Move!" Marcus shouted, grabbing Lysara's hand. Together they sprinted toward the nearest exit, weaving through the chaos as guards fired indiscriminately, some missing by inches. The crowd, sensing betrayal, erupted in fury. Bottles, boots, and curses rained down on the guards. Lysara glanced over her shoulder, eyes wild. "This way! Service tunnels!" They ducked into a narrow passage, boots pounding over ancient stone. Behind them, alarms blared, the Colosseum descending into chaos. Prisoners were breaking free of their pens, the crowd surging like a living tide. They emerged into the underbelly of the complex, where the warden's private lift gleamed in its alcove, guarded by 2 armored sentries. Lysara darted left, Marcus right, a perfect pincer. Lysara's blade flashed, disabling one guard. Marcus tackled the other, knocking the rifle from his grasp and rendering him unconscious with a chokehold. "Quickly," Marcus said, scanning the lift's control panel. Lysara jammed the override and the doors hissed open. They stepped inside, breath ragged, hearts racing. The lift shot upward, delivering them into the warden's suite, a palace of glass and obsidian, plush rugs and gold fixtures. The warden, flanked by 2 bodyguards, whirled in terror. "Please, wait," he stammered, hands raised. "This was never personal, I can—" Lysara was on him in a heartbeat, blade at his throat. Her voice was a growl. "You sent us to die for your amusement. Beg harder." Marcus ignored the pleas, crossing to the warden's command console. His fingers flew over the alien interface, bypassing security protocols. "Give me access to the pardons registry," he demanded. "Take it," the warden squealed, sweating, eyes wide. "Take the ship, the records. Just let me live." Lysara pressed the blade harder, her face inches from his. "If you ever hunt us again, I'll finish what I started." Marcus located the pardon file, encoded with their names. He activated the protocol, sending their release orders to every system on the planet. He turned to Lysara. "We're clear." She withdrew her blade, shoving the warden aside. "I hope you rot in the ruins you built," she spat. They ran for the landing bay, alarms wailing louder than ever. The warden's private vessel, sleek and black, waited on the pad. Marcus sprinted to the controls, firing up the engines. Guards converged on the hangar, but Lysara unleashed a barrage of covering fire, driving them back. "Go!" she shouted, leaping into the cockpit as Marcus slammed the hatch closed. The engines howled, the ship tearing free of the atmosphere in a burst of acceleration. The planet shrank rapidly behind them, becoming just another gleaming point in the void. Inside the cockpit, a hush settled, an aftermath laced with adrenaline, relief, and disbelief. Lysara, still breathing hard, reached out. Her fingers traced the scar on Marcus's shoulder, the mark of her bite. "The bite was anger," she murmured, her voice unsteady. I was furious, but you saw me. You saw more than the champion." Marcus covered her hand with his, silent for a moment. There was nothing left of the fever, but everything of the bond. He looked at her, the shadows of battle and longing flickering across his face. "You're not alone anymore." Lysara smiled, something soft and genuine blooming in her eyes. "Now we choose our path," she whispered. He smiled back, the future unwritten, and, for the first time, his own. Together, they sailed into the stars, ready for whatever came next. Half a year later, they called the bustling station Drift Point home. Their apartment was little more than a cubicle, wedged between the humming hydroponic stacks and a noodle stall. But it was theirs, a haven carved out of chaos and uncertainty. The window, scratched and clouded, offered a sliver of the star-streaked traffic beyond, punctuated by the neon blaze of the bazaar below. Marcus found peace in small rituals. He learned the language of Lysara's moods, the twitch of her feline ears, the flicker of her tail, the low purr in her chest when she was content. He found himself reading her before she spoke, anticipating her needs with a wordless intuition. She, in turn, mapped his quiet humor, the way he coaxed life from their tiny hydroponic garden, a stubborn patch of green in a world of chrome and circuitry. She watched him patch his boots, share a joke with the neighbor's child, and, in the moments when he thought she wasn't looking, stare into the middle distance with an old sorrow shadowing his eyes. Their bond, once forged in the white heat of battle and biological fever, settled into something steadier. The urgency faded, replaced by a partnership that was real and lasting. Marcus learned to trust the slow comfort of her presence, her head on his shoulder at night. Lysara's wildness softened, her laughter filling their cramped quarters. They made plans, a freighter someday, maybe a little corner of their own on a distant world. By day, Lysara fought in the station's underground arenas. Her skill and ferocity won her a reputation, but it was Marcus's strategies, his knack for reading opponents, mapping the hidden traps of the ring, that turned her into a legend. They made a living on wagers, splitting winnings with their little team of misfits. At night, Marcus would ice Lysara's bruises, her tail curling around his wrist as she recounted every blow and feint. Sometimes they watched the garden grow. Sometimes they simply lay together, finding peace in the steady thrum of the station's engines. One morning, as Marcus prepared a weak cup of coffee in their dented kettle, Lysara appeared in the doorway, hair mussed, stretching like a cat in the first light. "The registry opens early today," she murmured, her voice still thick with sleep. He nodded, pressing a kiss to her brow. "I'll check the listings for freighter shares. Maybe we'll get lucky." She grinned, her ears flicking. "Luck follows the stubborn." Marcus laughed, gathering his battered datapad and pulling on his jacket. He left with a promise. Back before lunch, with good news. The port registry was a maze of haggard brokers and nervous spacers. Marcus waited in line, scrolling through ship manifests and ownership records. When his turn came, he slid his credentials across the desk, hopeful. The clerk's eyes narrowed, fingers dancing over her terminal. "Your pardon code is invalid. This record is flagged. Union warrant, deserter status. You're being watched, Mr. Varick." Marcus's stomach dropped. "That's impossible. I have a pardon from Zynar authorities, signed, sealed." She didn't look up. "It's void. Union trumps local. And this?" She tapped the screen. "This bond with a Zynar? The Union calls it abduction. They see it as a threat." He felt cold. "I'm not. She's my partner. This is a mistake." The clerk's voice softened. "If you care for her, you'll leave before security gets involved." Marcus stumbled out, the station's lights spinning around him. He walked the long way home, mind racing. His life here, their fragile peace, was already unraveling. He thought of Lysara, her pride, her strength, her faith in him, and the danger she was now in because of him. Back in their apartment, Lysara looked up from tending the garden. She saw the tension in his jaw, the way his hands shook as he locked the door. "What happened?" she asked, voice sharp. He hesitated, then forced the words out. "My pardon. Gone. The Union flagged me as a deserter. And us. If they find us together, they'll say I took you, that you're a hostage." Her tail lashed. "That's a lie. I chose you." "I know," he said, voice tight. "But the law won't care. They'll come for me, and you'll be collateral. I can't let that happen." He tried to steady his voice, reaching for her hand. "Lysara, you should go. You could claim you were forced, or—" She jerked her hand away, eyes flashing. "No, I am not a burden. I fought at your side. I am your partner." Her voice broke, anger and hurt mingling. "Hurt." You would send me away to protect me? That's not love, Marcus. That's fear. He reached for her again, but she stepped back, the distance between them suddenly vast. You treat me like I'm fragile, like I'll break if things get hard. But you forget, I'm here because I want to be, because we choose this every day. Her words hit harder than any blow in the arena. Marcus saw, truly saw, the pain in her eyes, the insult buried in his attempt to shelter her. He had made her strong, but he'd failed to see her strength. He took a breath, voice low and honest. You're right. He closed the gap between them, taking her hand firmly. We face this together, whatever comes. Her anger melted into fierce loyalty. She squeezed his hand, her eyes shining. That's all I wanted to hear. They sat together on the floor, planning in hushed voices. Fleeing would mark them both as criminals, hunted across every port. But Lysara, ever the tactician, recalled the old ways of Driftpoint, the station's founding laws, meant to protect unions across species and cultures. A formal demonstration could override outside warrants if the bond was proven genuine and mutual before the station's council. It won't be easy, Marcus warned. We'll be on display. Every challenge, every doubt, they'll throw it at us. Lysara smiled, fierce and unyielding. Let them. We've survived worse. He squeezed her hand, heart lightening for the first time all day. We do this then. Not for survival, for us. She nodded, her ears angling forward in determination. We'll show them what a real bond looks like. They spent the night preparing, gathering documents, training responses, practicing the testimony they would give. Marcus made a list of every memory, every proof of their partnership. Lysara rehearsed, sometimes with a growl of frustration, sometimes with a laugh. They recounted the battles fought, the choices made, the shared moments that could not be faked or forced. Before dawn, Marcus paused, studying Lysara in the faint blue glow of their hydroponic garden. Whatever happens tomorrow, I wouldn't trade this, any of it. She pressed her forehead to his, her purr vibrating through them both. Nor would I. We built this, Marcus. Together. Hand in hand, they watched the station wake beyond their window, ready to fight for the future they had chosen. They faced Commander Elian Voss of the Union in a sterile conference room, the station's administrator watching from behind an energy-shielded dais. The room was all sharp edges and polished glass, the hum of security fields a quiet threat in the background. Voss stood in the center, tall and severe in his black and silver uniform, pale eyes cold and assessing. He looked at Marcus and Lysara and saw only a runaway soldier and a dangerous alien, a threat to order, a story the Union would not allow. Marcus met his gaze with calm defiance, standing a half-step behind Lysara. She was a study in contained power, her jade eyes steady, ears flicked forward in challenge. Her tail swept behind her, a banner of pride. Commander Voss's voice was clipped, precise. Marcus Varric, you stand accused of desertion, unlawful flight, and... He glanced at Lysara, distaste barely hidden. Unregulated cross-species bonding under Union law. The administrator, a willowy being with silver skin and a crown of bioluminescent spines, inclined their head. The Charter of Driftpoint requires formal evidence before extradition. The claim of bond was invoked. Voss's lips curled. A convenient fiction. We see a fugitive and his captor. Lysara's chin lifted. I am not his captor. I am his mate. Her voice was clear, echoing in the antiseptic air. He stands at my side by choice. I claim him under the ancient rights of Driftpoint. The administrator nodded. Article 12. The demonstration. Marcus's voice was steady as he stepped forward. I invoke it. We will prove our partnership in the arena by Union tradition and Driftpoint law, non-lethal, witnessed by all. Voss scoffed. You want a brawl to justify criminality? Marcus met his gaze, unflinching. A demonstration of unity, not violence for its own sake, but proof that what we are cannot be undone by decree. Voss considered, then gestured to his aide. Very well. Sergeant Harlan will stand as my champion. The sergeant, broad-shouldered and scarred, gave a curt nod. The administrator's spines glowed faintly. The challenge is accepted. You have 1 hour to prepare. The arena was stripped of spectacle. No roaring crowd, no flashing lights, just a ring of sand and the cold gaze of the law. Marcus stood at the edge, nerves hidden beneath the quiet mask of strategy. He and Lysara had fought together before, but this was different. This was proof, not just for the Union, but for everyone who doubted what they were. Lysara rolled her shoulders, blade in hand. He looks strong, she said, nodding at Harlan, who stretched across the ring, armored and confident. He's Union-trained, Marcus murmured, eyes never leaving the sergeant. Watch his left foot. He'll feint high and sweep low. The Union teaches precision, but not unpredictability. She smirked. You know their tricks? I know their instructors. He touched her arm, voice low. I'll guide you through every move. Trust me. Lysara's tail flicked. Always. The bell chimed, sharp and final. Harlan came in fast, swinging a practice staff with soldier's efficiency. Lysara dodged the first blow, blade humming. Harlan feinted left, just as Marcus predicted. Pivot, block low, Marcus called from the edge, his tone calm and sure. Lysara reacted instantly, meeting the sweep with her blade, sparks flying as wood met metal. She countered, pressing forward with a series of jabs. Harlan adjusted, shifting to a defensive stance. He'll try to tire you, Marcus warned. Don't give him ground. Lysara grinned, circling. Harlan lunged, but she sidestepped, letting his momentum carry him past. Marcus's voice was a thread through the chaos. Step right. 2 strikes to the wrist. He'll overextend. She followed, quick as lightning. Her blade struck Harlan's staff, disarming him. He spun, trying to recover, but Lysara's restraint was clear. She did not press the advantage, instead lowering her weapon and backing away. The administrator's gaze flicked to Voss, then back to the ring. Harlan retrieved his staff, breathing hard. He tried a different approach, feinting a knee strike before going for Lysara's shoulder. Marcus's voice came, steady as ever. He's desperate now. Wait for his charge. Harlan came barreling forward, but Lysara sidestepped and tripped him, sending him sprawling in the sand. She pinned him for a count, then released him, offering a hand to help him up. The match was over. Harlan stood, nodded in respect, and stepped back. The administrator rose, spines glowing brighter. The demonstration is complete. Lysara showed skill and restraint. Marcus, your tactics guided her throughout. The bond is evident, unity in mind and action. Voss's jaw tightened. For a long moment, silence hung between them all. Then finally, Voss spoke. You have proven your claim, Marcus Varric. You are no longer Union property. For the record, you are officially declared dead in Union files. You may begin anew, outside our jurisdiction. Marcus's breath caught. Lysara's hand found his, fingers intertwining. The administrator sealed the verdict. You are free to leave Driftpoint. Your bond is recognized. May your partnership endure. Later, aboard their ship, Driftpoint a distant star behind them, the tension finally broke. The cockpit was filled with the soft hum of navigation, the quiet flicker of starlight playing across the controls. Marcus sat at the helm, hands steady, eyes fixed on the endless dark. Lysara came up behind him, her presence a warmth at his back. She slid her hands onto his shoulders, kneading away the tension that had built up over days of uncertainty. He closed his eyes, savoring her touch. She leaned in, voice a soft murmur in his ear. You didn't hide me, Marcus. You fought with me. He tipped his head back, meeting her gaze. You're my greatest strength, Lysara. I wouldn't have survived without you. She smiled, leaning down to press her forehead to his. Their kiss was slow and deep, a promise of new beginnings, a seal on all they had endured. When they parted, Lysara settled into the seat beside him, her tail curling around his leg. Marcus set the course, the stars stretching out before them, infinite and unknown. They sat in companionable silence, not as champion and captive, not as fugitives, but as true partners, ready to chart their own course among the galaxies, together. Our story ends here. If you'd like to support us, you can use the Super Thanks button right under the video to leave a tip. It truly helps our team improve the quality of our work. We're grateful to each and every subscriber for being with us. Make sure you subscribe, press the like button, and tell us in the comments what stood out to you the most in this video. Your feedback means a lot to our team. You'll discover many more captivating stories on our channel. See you in the next one.